So this session is called Big Picture Thinking. The reason I chose this topic is actually because I find myself talking about this kind of thing a lot with people. So let me know when you can see, hopefully, the Big Picture Thinking screen. Okay. So I've got it up here. So I'm like kind of being thrown because it's not like in front of me. I'm used to it being in front of me. So, this is the kind of thing I find myself talking to people a lot where they, because I'm 23 years in, have the benefit of hindsight, just like Ruth would have. You've learned a few things along the way. And I thought this would maybe be beneficial just to share a few sort of general thoughts. And actually there'll probably be some overlap with what some of the other speakers are sharing. So this afternoon you've got Jessica Parnell will be talking about doing it with purpose, and I think there'll probably be some overlap with her. So big picture thinking in home education. Let's see. Oh, wait, sorry, I'm just trying to find out where my controls are for this thing. Okay, down there. You can see I don't do, there's a lot of very useful tips and things that I could be learning right now, but anyway, learn with me. Okay, let's see, is it going to go on my slide? Hang on a sec. I'm just trying to get the right thing here because it's not doing what I thought it would do. I wanted to show you my next slide and I can see it, but it's not going onto it. So sorry, please bear with me while I don't use PowerPoint very often, to be honest, and it's not my favorite. I'm sorry, this is terribly bad of me to be faffing about here, but I'm just not sure why it's not going to the next slide because I'm used to it working the way it works for me, and I actually can't. Oh, wait a minute. There we go. Sorry. Rookie mistake. Okay. So just some background. This is us. We've been married 34 years, Larry and I. This is my family of 7 children plus my 3 add-ons and my grandson. So my children are now 15, 17, 21, 23, 27, 28, and 31. And we've been home educating since 1998 and moved to the UK from South Africa in 2007. Okay, let's see what's next. You'll be as surprised as I am. Okay, so some of the things when we think about home education as a family, when you make the decision, there's various reasons why we arrive at that decision. So you could say, so the first thing is like, you need to consider, why have you come to home education? Whether it is through something that's gone wrong at school, is it something you've always just believed in philosophically? Did you go and do a lot of reading and homework? Did you hear about someone who home educated and you thought this sounds cool? Are you reacting to something negative that happened or a fear of things? It's important to know why, and to ask yourself, why am I doing this? Why does this appeal to me so much? What is it that's resonating with me? What is it about home education that is particularly attractive? And kind of just do some thought around that. And then we also look at, the other thing is, if you are already home educating, why have you gone to the approach that you're using? So if you're using a very structured approach, or if you're using a very relaxed approach, why? Is it because that's what you saw somebody else do? Is it because this is how you believe education takes place? So you're asking, why am I using this approach? And along with that is, why am I using the methods I'm using? So you take some time and think about the why. And we know that our children, often they won't do something unless they know why it's important. So it's important for us to ask the same questions of ourselves. Why are we doing this? And then we look at, along with that is, what is the thing that's motivating us in our home education? What are the driving forces? And also, what are the things that frighten us? So so those are just some thoughtful things. And I think if you're able to take time to sort of sit, think about it, write down your answers, and just kind of consider where is this coming from? So that was kind of what, because sometimes we only home educate when we're in crisis, but some people have thought about it for a long time, and that will affect how you home educate. So I'm on a lot of groups that are admin, and often people are home educating. They've taken their child out of school really quickly, and they actually haven't even thought about what they're going to do and why. They just know they have to do something in case the local authority comes knocking, and sometimes they'll grab at anything. And so you can kind of hit some bumps along the way if you haven't done that kind of thought about it. Okay, so here's some negative motivations. And I often do a whole talk just on this. So sometimes the way we are educating, because we are looking at what somebody else is doing, so there's comparison, or we want our children to do as well as somebody else's children, or we're comparing them to a school standard or what we believe a school standard is. So that could be a negative motivation. Up here in the corner, we've got emotional baggage. Well, it's got baggage, but I mean emotional baggage. So you've got to think about like your own past life, your own childhood, your own school experience, because some things that come from that could be negative motivations, and it's really good to understand that these come into play in our decision making, and it will influence us. And we also sort of fear disapproval from our family or from friends. So even sometimes from other home educators, if we're not doing the same as them, we fear maybe they will disapprove of us because we've chosen something different. And of course, fear comes into it so much. We can have fear of the authorities and what they're going to say. So that could shape how we, do our home education. We can have fear of failure, which is a very important one. I remember in my early days of home education, it was like, please, Lord, just let this work out. Just let this work out, because people are kind of watching you, especially if you've got family members. Like some people have family members that are very high achieving and their kids are in the private schools, and here you're choosing, and sometimes you're already the odd one in your family doing everything counterculturally, and so there's that fear. And fear is a big one. So you kind of need to think about these sort of negative motivations. Take that little bit of time to do some self-examination. And it's also important to kind of clean up our act. So clean up, take that why and the motivations and do a little bit of house cleaning. Figure it out so that you can kind of say, actually, that fear that I have of my children not achieving, that's actually not so important. My husband and I, we've discussed it, we've chatted about it, and actually this isn't a big deal. Or that chip on my shoulder that I'm carrying that goes back to my school days because of things that people said to me. Let me deal with that in myself so that that doesn't come in and sort of contaminate how I home educate my child. So sometimes we need to do the work on ourselves, and how you process this, it also depends a lot on your personal beliefs and philosophies in how you deal with cleaning up your own life, cleaning up that emotional baggage. I just want to go back to the thing where I said about comparison. I want to give you a little example. I had a friend who we kind of home educated almost like together, did a lot of things together. And she would often talk to me about like, oh, we went to see this, and you have to go and see this. You can't miss it. And as well-meaning as it was, that still brought me under some sort of condemnation if I didn't do it. And that's why you have to think carefully, why you're doing something. Yes, you may have a great time, but sometimes financially you can't afford to do what that person has done. So, you know, I know of people who can talk wonderful stories about their home education and traveling all over the world with their children and showing them wonderful things. But if you don't have the money to do that, then you're going to think, I'm a terrible home educator. I can't do this for my children. Oh, I'm just failing them. And you've really got to think hard about that. And, you know, for me, I'm coming from my home education has been partly as a thing of faith from my Christian belief. So I would also then just really be praying and trusting for the right answers for my family. And so that's how you process it. Depends on your personal beliefs and philosophies. And, you know, you just don't want to put that on your children. You don't want to bring all that negative stuff in on your children. So let's go back to our next slide. I've got to get up. I've got two screens here, so it kind of gets interesting. Hang on a sec. It's now telling me some of my fonts cannot be saved to the presentation. So we might lose some of our writing. Who knows? Because I created this in one thing and downloaded it into PowerPoint. So as you can see, I've got a little picture here of a road map with a car and a compass. You need to figure out where you want to go. Where do you want your family to go? What is really important? And what is really important is actually a big one, because you need to look then at very big goals. Think of your child when they're 25, 30. What is going to be important for them? What's that outcome going to look like? So don't get too bogged down in the here and now, but get that big picture thinking going. What is success to you? And that's another important one, because before we started home educating, I always used to think, you know, success is, you know, you've got to have a university degree, then you're successful. But as we kind of started looking at home education and thinking about our children, we did had a change of heart on that. And we felt that actually success is really for us about our children being happy and healthy, and actually most importantly, being able to support themselves, but being nice people with good relationships. And we'll get into that a little bit more in a minute, but actually just what is important to you? What is success? Look at the society we live in today. What is success in today's world? What would success look like for you? What outcomes do you want for your children? And as your children get older, that conversation will actually include them and should include them, because you want them to take responsibility for their own journey at some point, and direct themselves. So let's go to the next slide. Okay, so this is a favorite illustration I use. So those who've sat in with me before will be familiar with this. A college professor, by all accounts, stood in front of his class with a big jar, and he had some rocks and some pebbles and some sand. And he asked the students, you know, do you think I can fit all of this in this jar? And they didn't think that he could. And what he did is he took the biggest things first, which is your rocks, and he put them into the jar. And then he took the pebbles and put them in the jar, shook the jar around so that the pebbles all went in and filled in some of the little gaps and managed to fit in. And then he took the sand and put the sand in and shook it about a bit, and the sand all settled in around. And theoretically, you could probably add water to that as well and still fit some water in there. So that is this illustration, why I like it, is because we're going to ask ourselves, what are the rocks? What are the absolute non-negotiables? What are the first things we want to consider the most important things? Now, and then the pebbles represent other important, but not like your deal breakers. And then the sand is like even further removed from your most important. So rocks to me are, so what are your biggest priorities? It could be your faith and your beliefs that you want to make sure your child grows up in those. Relationship with family, I think, is vital, that you all have a good relationship, and that in home education is such a wonderful way of achieving that. Relationship with others, so being caring for others, reaching out to the community, and of course their character, which goes along with that. And these are all kind of intertwined as well. Now, the pebbles are things that matter, but are not so much at the heart of what makes this child who they are. So that can be things like life skills, literacy and numeracy. I notice I don't say maths and English, literacy and numeracy, because this is not always getting a degree or an IGCSE in English is not actually going to be achievable for some children, but you want them to be able to communicate, and you want them to have some math skills, because that kind of will help them in life. A good work ethic is a really good one to aim for. And I've seen in my own children how that has paid off for them in just out in the world. You want to develop their gifts and their talents. And then there's also caring and serving, which is also part of character. But I'm talking here sort of in terms of activity, what's taking up their time. So the rocks need to take up most of your time. The pebbles should take up less of your time, and the sand is actually a filler. So I've got here sundry academics, busy work, watching TV, console games, there's lots of other things. But, you know, if your main rock, one of your main rocks is to like really develop relationships with one another, you don't necessarily want your child on console games for most of the time, because that's kind of where they're not building relationships with others. There are ways in which they can like connect with one another online and play together, but it's a thought out approach. It's not just, I think sometimes that can become a default where, oh, well, you know, they've got nothing else to do, they can go and do that. So it's having that thoughtful approach. The sundry academics, the reason I've put that there is because when they design a curriculum, how a curriculum is put together is actually quite arbitrary. So a professor, or, you know, there might be a group of people who all they do is decide what children are going to learn and when. But it is pretty much a pick and mix. Let's have a bit of Battle of Hastings here, and we have a bit of Vikings there, and we have a bit of this geography there. It actually doesn't matter. And if we want our children, you know, academics can actually be caught up at any time, especially once a child can read, they can teach themselves. But character cannot be changed once, you know, when children are young, that's the time to shape character. Character is often really much more important than worrying about academics. And there were times when my kids, the way they were squabbling, I'd say to them, okay, look, drop everything. We need to sit and we need to have a chat. And that we would take that time to work through whatever the issues were, which helped and actually was more important for their character, more important as a long-term goal, because it is a marathon and not a sprint. And the problem with academics is that there's such a focus on that and actually not a focus on character in young people. And there is a window, you have a window when they are children, and it's so important to really invest in them so much in their character when they are young, and that will stay with them as they get older. Like, you know, just like when children are little and you're constantly, no, don't do that, no, don't do that, no, don't do that, you know, eventually you don't have to do it anymore. They know. So you know, it is that investment when they're younger. Okay, so what does this look like in education? And I've tried to show sort of different children, all at different stages and ages. Well, I haven't got big kids there, but you know what I mean, you get the picture. So in education, how does this look? Okay, so now I'm just going through some factors that are good to consider. So along with your big picture, you know, planning, big picture thinking, all of these other things have to kind of come into it as well and be taken into consideration. Your child's emotional, physical, and mental development. So as I said, you know, not all children can achieve what another child, you know, one child can't necessarily achieve what another, you know, they're different. And so you need to consider that and not put an unfair requirement on your child that isn't suited to who they are and what they're capable of. Readiness is a very important one, especially we know with reading and that kind of thing, those who've had experience, that actually if you wait until they're ready, you hardly have to teach them at all. It will come, and not to be fearful about that. So learning styles, children learn differently. Some need to be really hands-on. Some love to just read books. Some like to do things lying down. It's all of these different things that children can do differently, and we need to understand that it's not like a Coke machine where you put the penny in and not a penny, a pound, whatever. You put a pound in and a Coke comes out. Sometimes you put that pound in and nothing comes out, and you have to give it a shake, and eventually it comes out. And sometimes you can do all of that and nothing comes, and you have to call in an expert. So, but our children are not cans of Coke. They are all unique and different. So, but you get the picture. So with the motivation, so that goes back to what I said earlier. It's what is your motivation, and also your child's motivation. And I found with my children, as they get older, maturity and motivation are actually really, really important in the secondary years. So you want to bring them to a place of sort of understanding, having that maturity to understand why some things are necessary, even though they don't enjoy them, why they might have to tick boxes when, to get where they want to go, and to motivate themselves. And then there's also your own motivations, and why are you pushing a certain thing? Why are you really, why do you have these expectations of your child? And of course, we want to build lots of positive experiences, because positive experiences means that children will look back on their learning journey as being this wonderful time, shared time with their family. I've just been processing my daughter's recording, which will go on the Meet the Home Educated. And she, I just enjoyed watching her, because she talks about all these positive experiences and how they've shaped her. And of course, another thing is that we want to make sure that our children understand respectful relationships, but also that we have a respectful relationship with our child, and understand that they're not really ours forever. They're not a possession. They are growing to be a person in their own right, with their own future, and to respect that, and to tread carefully. Okay, so another thing, let's see. Okay, so this is something I've been talking about more recently, which is Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So some of you may have come across this in your studies. And there are some that say, oh, it's not really like that. But I think there's some basic truths in it. Is that a child, first of all, okay, physiological needs. You need to always make sure your children's physiological needs are met. Make sure they've got food, make sure they're sleeping, make sure they're warm and comfortable, because if they're not, that's going to affect their learning and how they respond to you. It's going to affect their mood and all of that. So I have a son who's very stomach driven, and I had to learn to read the signs and try and preempt his hangriness, because it didn't go well when he was a little hungry. But I tried not to let on to him that that's what I was doing, because I didn't want him to I didn't want it to become a manipulation thing. Well, I can't do that because I'm hungry. So I would just try and anticipate. And then, of course, your safety needs, feeling secure. And I think this is where a lot of children that are in schools where there's a problem, because there are children who are in a classroom who don't feel safe, don't feel secure, all sorts of things going on in their personal lives, maybe in their classroom, maybe with their peers. And they cannot learn while they don't feel safe, they don't feel secure, they don't feel that security is so important. And I remember with my oldest child, when you are still at that stage of comparing and competing with others and trying to be a really good mum, and trying to push her off me into ballet classes and into different groups, and she would cling to me, and I was like, come on, and peel her off me and try and make her go to classes. And it didn't help the clinginess. I just want to say, it did not help the clinginess. As I had more children, what I learned is actually to go with that clinginess for as long as you needed to, because it was part of them feeling secure. And so I would then sit with them in groups until they were 100% happy for me to no longer be there, because they knew that I would come back if they needed me. So it was basically me just being that presence that they knew wouldn't go away, and with that knowledge, they could then become more independent. So my younger children are actually were more independent at a younger age because they had just such a secure base. But it took me a while to learn that, and that is unfortunately the lot of eldest children, isn't it, Ruth? We have to practice on them. Okay, so here's another thing to consider. So you've got, see, I've got a picture of a t-shirt and a coat hanger and a rail, and then everything's all neatly hooked up. So how do we make sure that putting that all together gives us a nice, neat wardrobe? Where's Mum? Sorry, I'm just trying to find where my cursor's gone. There it is. Okay. How do we make sure that it is that and not that? Now, I'm talking about brains here, how brains work. So children, if we go back to, let me see if I can go back to my previous slide. If we go back to this, when we, like I've also learned that I can't really teach unless the children want to be taught, unless they're asking me. So when you just throw knowledge at a child, much as what a classroom would do, is just trying to throw content at a child, it is a little bit like a wardrobe with no coat hangers, because the knowledge can go into the wardrobe, but it's all in a bit of a jumble. There's no framework. There's nothing to hang it on. When a child asks the question, when a child is the one with the interest and the curiosity, that is like the coat hanger that they can then hang the knowledge onto and hook it into their brain within the whole framework of, and they're able to then fit it in. Where does it go? Where does this knowledge go? I've attached this to that, and now it attaches there, and I can understand the whole. Now, I know some of us may have brains that look like this. I think mine does a lot of the time. But you can understand it's quite stressful. And can you imagine in an exam and so on, when you're trying to find the knowledge and it doesn't make sense, so you've just memorized it because it's the only way you know how. So I think, you know, so to me, that wardrobe, I use it quite a lot, that analogy of the wardrobe. Okay, so another thing that I have to speak about, because this has become more and more important to me over the years, is play. Maria Montessori said play is the work of the child. And I've got a list here of the things that play develops. Play is crucial to foundations for children, absolutely crucial. Now, if you go on to the article sharing on the Hoover app, I've shared a video there. This is our brains when we play, or something like that. This is what a brain looks like. Please go and watch it. It's by the former CEO of Lego Foundation. And she talks about how these things that I've mentioned here on my list are far greater predictors of future success than whether a child is able to read and write at the age of 5. Okay. So if you look at it, things like critical and creative thinking, understanding cause and effect, productivity, all of that is covered by play, and it is foundational. You think of how children have to navigate with each other when they're playing together, how they have to negotiate and figure things out. It's just, you know, I cannot stress enough how important play is. And this is what do I want to say? No, it's no adults allowed play. Okay. It's not adults saying, why don't you do this? Why don't you do that? You know, it is sometimes that's necessary when you're really busy and you need your child to just be busy for a while, and you give them something to do. But it's actually ideal when children are bored and they just start playing with one another and they get totally engrossed in a game all by themselves. And we only intervene if it's really, like, you know, trouble's brewing and somebody's going to get hurt. But with with as little interference from adults as possible for them to develop, it just is immeasurable. I am such a firm believer in play. And Raymond and Dorothy Moore wrote a book called Better Late Than Early. And in their book, they cite studies that show that most children should not really start formal schooling until they are at least 8 and possibly as late as 12. Because it actually, there's no real benefit to it. So play, I would say, most if you're going to do learning, any kind of thing, try and make it as play-based as possible until they're around 8 years old. You know, you will see a difference in them as they grow. You will see the maturity come. You will see how that develops, their thinking develops, how they start actually finding things for themselves and actually start going and doing their learning for themselves. It is a wonderful thing. My youngest children, I did, you know, quite not much with them really when they were younger. They were allowed to play. I would always just, well, they're only 7, they're only 8, they can play. As they got a little older, I did sort of make them do some worksheets, maths and English, bare minimum, just to tick a box and make me feel a little less guilty. But there again, there's your motivation, is you don't want to feel guilty, you don't want to feel bad. And I suppose we also have the worry of what do we tell the local authority. You just write everything in nice big long words like this. My child is going through their, you know, we cover socio-emotional development, and we address whole child development, and you can use all these big words. Okay. So here I've just done a list of what Lego does. Okay. So if you know, we often think, like when I try and explain to somebody what does Lego teach children, it's, you know, I can't always come up with all the words, but here they are. Here are all the words. This is what Lego does. I particularly like the learning to fail. We need to we need to let our children know that it's okay to fail. And they will learn far more when we let them fail and don't always kind of want to show them a better way to do it. Let them fail, let them figure it out. My son used to go on sort of Lego building marathons for say 3-4 days, and what he would graduate to from first day to the 4th day, you know, that it was just, you know, the skills that he was learning just in terms of, okay, well, if I build it this way, it just falls apart, and then they've got to figure that out. And actually he's 15, he still builds with Lego. He does spacecraft, he does all the, like he tries to recreate the Mars rover and rockets. He's very into space, and it's building a strong design ability in him. And because Lego, you're actually working with constraints, because they're square blocks and they're difficult shaped blocks. So he's had to work with constraints. So think of what happens in your brain to figure that out. The other thing is on here is creating for a reason. So they begin to understand productivity, you know, which is so important. So there's the list. If you're not able to write everything down, you can either take a picture of it actually if you want, of the slide, or I can put them into some notes when I get like 10 minutes or something later on. There you go. Take a picture, Joanna. Oh, I see what he built. Is that a he built that? Brilliant. Okay, exciting, but well done. But building things, look at that. Look at that. And you will learn so much. And children learn so much. So these things are actually really, really important. And of the self-esteem, you know, the success when you do something well. So this is what just playing with Lego will do for your child. Okay, so the other thing, we need to understand that learning is something we do for ourselves. We can't do it for another person. They are responsible for their learning. It involves the whole personality. And actually this came from a list of, it was to do with learning is actually only successful when we do it for ourselves. It involves our whole personality. When we want to learn it, when we're meeting a personal need, when it helps us make sense of a subject, when we build or make things, when we think things, and when we want to survive or thrive. So these, I think, just as a parent to understand what actually happens if we want our children to really learn and gain mastery, we need them to these things to be happening for them. And how do we foster that in them? Here's another long list. I'm so sorry. Long lists. Shall I just run through them? Know your child's character, temperament, ability, gifting. Know your own strengths and weaknesses. Know your priorities. understand what influences you and why. So this is some of what I've said already about motivations, how learning happens, the role of productivity in learning, how learning happens best. So I'll pull out here, live life and let your children live it with you. Let them witness your learning and be released to learn for themselves. And that one I found really important, because like I joined a ladies barbershop course. That's something I do for fun. And I did it mainly at the time because I needed something that I could enjoy that would feed me in some way. And what actually happened is, so my one daughter got involved with the youth chorus. And so she started coming with me when I went to competition. She would come with me because they did, the youth chorus got to sing on stage as well. And then the other daughter joined. And now they're both members of the youth chorus, quite active in the youth chorus, and they really enjoy it. And they've been learning a whole lot of skills, singing skills and so on through it. But it started with me being willing to try something, and they do watch you. So you need, I think, that modeling of doing something because it's productive and meaningful, and seeing the joy in you as a parent. I don't think it's selfish. I think that actually we're modeling to them how we want them to learn and explore the world and take on new challenges. And you know, so it's when you're doing something because it's productive, you can see the result. Children like that. You know, you put this together and that together, and then you get a cake. You've got a result. We like that. Children like that. We are supportive and facilitative. Yeah, practice your faith and beliefs in a meaningful way, and don't be afraid of the hard questions that they ask. Be prepared to find the answers together. So that's also another long list. So sorry about that, but it's, yeah. I think that is the end of my slide. So let me just end that share there. Okay, and I'm back in the room with all of you. So a lot of information there, but just hopefully to help with, as you know, as you kind of think about home education. If your children are young, great, take that opportunity. I wish somebody had told me some of the stuff when my children were younger, and I might have stressed less. I do want to add, there's something I do want to add, and I've said this to a few people, is that we've had a lot of challenges in our life. We've moved countries, moved cities, while like expecting babies, and we've had family live with us for 8 months at a time, and had some very, very stressful times, which totally threw me for a loop, and rocked our family in some ways, because of if you're impacted and you're not coping, then that kind of impacts the family. And one of the things that I think is valuable to do, as it might sound quite negative, but is think about what's your worst case scenario. What's the absolute worst thing for you that could potentially happen to you or your family as a result of your home educating or whatever? Spend some time thinking about that, and then think, what will I do if that actually happens? How will I deal with that? What am I going to put in place? So say, for instance, you are going to move. I mean, I was very sort of blithely optimistic, like, oh, it'll all be all right. We moved when I was a kid and it was fine. And moving had a huge, huge impact on my children, my young people. It reshaped our family entirely. It has changed the course of my children's lives. And so things like that, you know, we've got to be, it's nice to be optimistic, but I think you've got to really you need a bit of pessimism sometimes in there, just to kind of prepare so it doesn't knock you. Because when you are an optimist and something difficult and hard happens, what actually happened is I just retreated into myself. You know, I actually was no good. I couldn't actually, you know, I had to get on the life raft by myself, because I didn't even know how to help everyone else onto the life raft. I was kind of just like, it floored me. So maybe you need to find out how you can build a life raft that you can all fit on in difficult times and challenges. And that analogy I just thought of right now, and that's for free. You're welcome. So anyway, if anyone's got questions, I think there's something there that, oh, that was just Ruth saying that. And Nadia said, working on yourself is a must. Yes, and comparison can be a killer. So it is really important to think about your own, like who you are, what's happened to you, what's shaped you as a person, and be aware how that can be worked out in your parenting and your educating. Anyone else have any questions? What I will do is, if I get a minute, I will sort those notes. I'll put them in a note form for you and upload them as a PDF onto the session itself so that you can actually print out that. But I hope you found that helpful. Okay, Esther, what are your kids doing now? How did your goals change for them? Did they become what you thought? Thank you, Esther. Actually, they are doing okay. They are doing okay. It maybe not what I dreamed originally. Maybe the expectations had to change. But you know, I think the thing is we've got to understand that, like, it's not necessarily home education that was the issue there, that it's life. So life can happen to you regardless whether you're home educating your children in school. You know, that can happen. Stuff can happen. Stuff can, you know, so you don't, you know, it's not, if any of you watched the film Sliding Doors, where you see two potential outcomes, we don't live a sliding door. We don't have a chance to go and see what it would have been, and we shouldn't go there. But my goals did have to change for them. So my oldest daughter, when we came here, she was 18, and she'd lived a fairly sheltered life, I guess, because we lived out in the country and she couldn't go anywhere unless we took her. She's quite a social kid. And we moved to the UK, moved to Coventry, right near the city centre. She was 18. She started college straight away. And all her friends at college said, oh, you know, you don't need to, your parents can't tell you what to do because you're 18. You can do what you like because you're 18. And actually, she went and she did what she liked because she didn't need us, because she could walk everywhere. She could get the cab. And she totally threw herself, immersed herself in British youth culture, as such as it is, if that her college friends introduced her to, which led to I mean, a lot of partying and ultimately having a baby, which is a whole other story in itself. But you know, that turned out to actually be a really healing thing, because you know, what I actually tried to do with that is to rebuild my relationship with her more than anything, because that relationship is so important. And so I really worked hard. And I think probably, if I was going to say the most important thing, if you're doing your worst case scenario planning, make it about relationship. Maintaining relationship at all costs, if you can. So I really went out to just love her and love her and love her, and it changed our relationship. She went on to have her little boy, who's an absolutely fantastic kid. Is a real blessing to us all. And her life kind of turned around at that point because she had to take on the responsibility. And it turned out to be quite redemptive for her. She's working. She's very responsible mum. And even in COVID, she's had to find new jobs. She's had no difficulty finding work. So she did a childcare qualification, but she doesn't work in childcare at all. She's done sort of mainly like admin and so on, but she's not had any difficulty finding work ever. My second oldest, she suffered a bit through the move because she lost like her friends and battled to find friends here in the UK. And I think fundamentally it changed her a little bit. But we've had to kind of, you know, you have to realize these things shape you. These things shape you. These things change who you are. For me, it was like, I think also trying to sustain that perfect family persona thing, like, oh, we got it all together. Let me tell you, I've said this many times before, nobody has any business giving parenting advice while their children are 12 and under. If your children are 12 and under, keep that humility, because you may need it in the future. So, and I don't mean that in a horrible way, and I don't wish anything difficult, but we just don't know. We just don't know what life is going to throw at us and what can happen. And we know, you know, it could happen to us. These things can happen to us. So Esther, just to answer you, so all of my children that are adults are in work. Maybe not what they might have done differently, but you know, I trust in a God that is in charge. I believe that my children's lives, you know, that everything happens for a reason, and God can shine through a cracked pot. He can shine his light through a cracked pot, and and actually we can help each other. You know, we learn from our difficulties and we can encourage one another from our difficulties. It's just life. So yeah, and my daughter's done a little video which will be somewhere on the app once it's uploaded, about her experience, my 17-year-old. So they're great. They came here very little. They've had a much different ride to their older siblings. Stephanie, grants to access for resources as home educators, unfortunately, not really. I know some home education groups have been successful in securing like specific grants for specific projects, but it's tough. It's tough out there. Home educators are not the top of anyone's priority list for funding, unfortunately. We may need to look after each other. We may need to set up funds ourselves. So we're pretty good at the DIY. Thank you, Tade, for your comment there. And Danielle and Ruth, thank you for your comments. So yes, thank you very much. I think that's it. So I'm going to ask Ruth to close the session and we'll see you around.